For thousands of years, the tuna has been fascinating humans with its incredible size, speed, and appearance. One of the largest fishing industries today, the tuna market, which includes yellowfin, bluefin, and big eye tuna, is worth over $40 billion a year. 5 years ago, at a Japanese fish auction, a single tuna that weighed 490 pounds sold for $1.8 million alone. There's a trend of an increase in demand for tuna meat for foods like tuna steaks, sushi, and canned tuna products. The current stocks of oceanic tuna face an increasing rate of decline over the last few decades due to climate change and increasing water temperature, destroying suitable habitats for their reproduction. An even bigger problem that the so-called chicken of the sea is up against is that of extreme overfishing. There simply are not enough tuna fish in our oceans to keep up with the rate at which we've been harvesting them. Thus, the population is at risk of eventual extinction. Over 4 million metric tons of tuna are being harvested each year, and the tuna fish populations can't reproduce enough to replenish their already dwindling numbers. One study found that the Pacific bluefin tuna population has had a decrease of over 90% due to the ongoing overfishing in the Pacific Ocean. At this rate, without any real action being taken, humans will be fully to blame for the mass extinction of one of the ocean's most incredible species. Currently, there are organizations that are working to help solve this gigantic problem. The ICCAT, or International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tuna, have set quotas on how many fish, like the Atlantic bluefin tuna, can be taken out from the ocean each year. Sadly, the current quotas that have been set for how many tuna the fishing industry can take from the sea are already over the amount that is considered sustainable by the scientific community. Massive fishing boats with nets that can span the length of over 2 football fields constantly continue to deplete tuna stocks and kill other unwanted fish in the process. In the Pacific, regional fishing management organizations, or RFMOs, are supposed to enforce and uphold the laws applied to the tuna fishing industry and the limits on how many tons of fish they can catch. Unfortunately, these regulations are just ignored altogether in many parts of the world. Every year, there are hundreds of thousands of tons of tuna illegally fished from the sea that never get reported. This practice is especially common in Japan and doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. One study found that the estimated value for the black market of tuna meat in the Pacific was worth over $600 million a year. This illegal fishing is detrimental to smaller fishing nations in the Pacific who rely on the tuna for both food and income. The United States has tuna populations on both sides of our nation, ranging from Maine all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, as well as throughout the West Coast. The government currently refuses to put tuna species on the endangered list despite massive amounts of scientific evidence and environmental petitions for this step forward. Without the tag of being endangered, the government can turn a blind eye to the rapid decline of tuna fish stocks. Unlike larger industrial nations such as Japan or the United States, some smaller island countries in the Pacific have a more sustainable approach to tuna fishing. Instead of using huge nets to catch mass amounts of tuna, they use the traditional style of pole and line fishing. This decreases the amount of fish they can bring in and decreases unwanted bycatch of undersized tuna and other species. This practice also creates more jobs in the communities while benefiting the tuna populations in these waters. One of the biggest problems that the tuna industry needs to see fixed is the issue of honesty and accountability. This includes setting new, stricter quotas on how many tuna can be fished from the oceans each year. Current quotas have not been scientifically derived, leading to the constant decline in the population that we see today. Instead of putting quotas in place that help the tuna industry, the regulations should be set to benefit the overall survival of tuna fish stocks in an attempt to prevent the extinction of the species. Another major change that would benefit the tuna's survival is to start going after the black market tuna trade that goes on every day. Illegal catching and selling of tuna fish will continue until government organizations begin to track down and put an end to these criminal activities. Without anyone to keep this industry in check, it will just continue to destroy ocean ecosystems by greedily taking more and more fish. A different proposed solution towards saving the tuna would be to ban massive fishing nets altogether, decreasing the amount of tuna and bycatch that will be killed each year. If the fishing industry had to use the pole and line method, they would be unable to drain our oceans of tuna at the extreme rate they currently do. One more way to fix the decline in tuna is to decrease the need for wild tuna fishing by increasing the use of aquaculture. The practice of aquaculture, or fish farming, would be extremely beneficial to the tuna populations in the oceans. Instead of pulling fish out of their natural ecosystems, fishermen could raise their own sustainable populations of tuna in small enclosed areas. They could still use these fish to sell and profit from, but it would be much more sustainable and easier to keep track of in terms of how many tuna are available for human consumption. All of this change rests on the shoulders of multinational organizations like the UN, who need to band together before this issue reaches the point of no return. As well as being an environmental issue, the extinction of tuna is a human rights problem due to the fact that so many smaller Pacific nations rely on these fish to feed their people and help their economies. Overall, the rapid decline in tuna fish populations worldwide is a massively undervalued issue. It's a complex problem that needs to be dealt with as soon as possible to prevent complete extinction of tuna species. The world needs to accept that this unsustainable industry has to change, or we may soon live on a planet where humans are entirely responsible for the loss of a magnificent and profitable oceanic fish.